This is TalkLoudRadio.com.
A deep one for the end zone. Balin is down there. Oh, he got it! He got it! He got it! Touchdown!
Oh, a spectacular move by Michael Jordan.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to episode 59 of the Armchair Fantasy Show. I'm your host, of course, Jeff Lambert. You can always follow me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. We are live every Tuesday and Friday night, and we are now live beyond just Facebook. We are also on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube Live, so you can find us all there. As always, presented by Talk Loud Radio and streaming in the Going for Two app. We are down a member of the crew this week. Gerson unfortunately could not make it, so we had to settle for second best. We got his brother, his twin brother, Mr. Jason. How you doing tonight, man?
Second best. Ouch. Doing good, man.
Good stuff, good stuff. How was your holiday, man?
Mine was awesome, man. I spent it with my neighbors and then my family. You know, it was good, man. It was good.
Good stuff. And, of course, Tim's always with us. Mr. Tim Strobel, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good tonight. I had a good Thanksgiving, went down to Houston, spent some time with the family, but that Thanksgiving slate killed me, man. I don't think I cashed a single lineup.
Yep, I'm with you on that. I had the same issue. I had Traquan Smith in basically all my lineups and didn't pivot in time and got stuck playing Calvin Ridley. And then, just Drew Brees was basically trolling everybody. I think he had himself, in fantasy leagues, and then his opponent must have had Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara because he didn't throw to them basically the whole game. He was just trolling us.
The scrub bowl.
Exactly. I think everybody that didn't score, it was kind of like he was kind of like Oprah. He was like, you get a touchdown, and you get a touchdown, and you get a touchdown.
Yep.
All right, well, we got a great slate for this week. We're going to go ahead and just jump right into it. We'll start, of course, with the quarterbacks like we always do. Tim, we'll go to you first on DraftKings over here. Any of these top-tier quarterbacks that you like?
Yeah, man. Obviously, some big news came out today. We're going to talk about that later, and that kind of shifted up how I looked at quarterbacks this week, too. So it kind of moved Pat Mahomes in my rankings. I wasn't really considering him for too many tournament lineups, but I think that they might be throwing the ball a bit more now. So I definitely the number one quarterback for me coming into today, though, was Cam Newton. I still love Cam Newton. He's still right up there as one of the best plays on the week. He gets the terrible Buccaneers. Obviously, I think they're the worst pass DVOA in the league. That's how you attack them. He obviously, he can still get there with his legs, too. So I love Cam this week. He's expensive, but you pay up for him.
Yeah, I love that Cam call. Actually, in my season-long league, I actually own Cam, and his schedule over the next couple of weeks is just unbelievable. I mean, he's got the Bucs this week, so that's a great matchup. He's got the Saints, I believe, next week, the Browns, and then the Saints again. So just some great matchups for him over the next couple of weeks. So he'll be a good DFS play as well. Jason, What about over on FanDuel? I know FanDuel is not your wheelhouse, but you're covering for Gerson, so you got FanDuel tonight. What you got for FanDuel?
Just like Tim said, I'm on Cam Newton. I'm also on Jameis Winston, and those are my two main quarterbacks for cash games. I have other quarterbacks for GPPs, but I'll let Tim get into that. He's more of a GPP mindset than I am, so more of a cash game player. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the only one I would add that we haven't talked about already as far as those top-tier guys is Jared Goff coming off the bye, playing Detroit. Detroit's defense has just been horrendous, and I think that the Rams will come off. Gurley's fully healthy. They're going to be able to just pick the lines apart. They're playing in Detroit, but it's in a dome, so that kind of favors the Rams with their speed. So Jared Goff at 8,400 on FanDuel is a pretty good play as well, and of course you can stack him with just about anybody. Robert Woods is probably the one you'd want to get in there, but Jared Goff's a pretty good play as well. All right, let's move into some of the mid-tiers and values here, Tim. What you got for your quarterbacks over on DraftKings?
Yeah, well, Jason mentioned it. He's probably going to be my cash game quarterback. It's Jameis Winston. I think he's a great mid-tier play on DraftKings. I think he's good for both cash and GPP because he's got plenty of upside. Another guy I'm considering, not as much for cash, but definitely for GPPs, is Andrew Luck. He's just been on an incredible run these last few weeks, throwing multiple touchdowns in every game. I don't think he's been under 20 points in like 6 weeks. He is playing Jacksonville, but they haven't been the Jaguars of old this year, so I think we can still feel confident playing against a quarterback against them. And then one other guy you just mentioned, you mentioned as kind of on the other side of the golf, is going to be Matthew Stafford. He's kind of more of a punt play, but I think that he's got some good upside, and he'll save you a good bit over Jameis. But I think the more popular play in that range is going to be Kirk Cousins. He's only 5,500 this week, and he's at New England. So I think that, I mean, even if it was Diggs. Is Diggs playing?
He's still questionable. I know Thielen's been ruled in, but Diggs is still questionable.
Okay, well, whether or not Diggs plays, I still think Cousins is in play. I think for cash, I probably would go Jameis, but I wouldn't fault you if you went Cousins.
Yeah, that's a good call. I like those as well. I think the Luck call is a great call. I actually talked about Luck a little bit on our Tuesday show for season long, but Luck's got 8 straight games now with 3 touchdowns or more. Including a game against these same Jacksonville Jaguars. They were at home that game, but it's still, a telling sign that he can definitely throw against them. And then another thing that's been kind of interesting as well is I know in the past it's always been like, they can't protect Andrew Luck. He's always running for his life. They've only given up 2 sacks in the last 7 games. So he's getting the protection. He's got a decent run game now if Marlon Mack gets back in there. That offense is a little more balanced. The defense is good enough to do what they got to do to keep the score down. So Andrew Luck is a great call. And I wish I had listened to you, Tim. I know we haven't talked much since the last time we were on the show, but you had a T.Y. Hilton Andrew Luck stack 2 weeks ago, and I didn't play it. I didn't play it, and I wish I had, because I mean it was an unbelievable stack, and I think it ended up being the one that won the GPPs in a couple of my tournaments. So I said, man, Tim had that one nailed, and I just didn't follow his advice. So good stuff there, man.
All the money I made that day, I've lost since.
I was all over that, man. I was all over that. I was like, T.Y. Hilton's too cheap. Andrew Luck's just about the right price. He's got to pair this up. And, I mean, you're hoping to go back and forth with that, too. So, but it was a good
I think
stack.
that was DJ Moore week a couple weeks, too, on that same slate. He was 4,200 and I think went off for 20-plus points. So I had a lot of Luck and Hilton and DJ Moore, so that helped out.
Oh, man, it was money. Especially, you could have gone the other way around, too, with Cam Newton. So it was perfect.
Yep.
So it was a good, we'll get into it more on this podcast. Like, you can do that with a couple games coming up, and I think it's a good call. Good call, Tim, on that.
All right, Jason. Over on FanDuel, are there any value quarterbacks beyond the ones you've already mentioned? Anybody else you want to talk about?
I mean, I don't want to go cheaper than Jameis Winston, but if I have to, I'm going to go to Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota, he was 22 for 23 last week. On passing, he did good. The downfall is his depth of targets on those passes. They weren't that high. I think they were barely over like 6.0. They weren't that high. So we're just hoping that he actually gets it going this time and he scores a couple touchdowns. And for 7,000, he could easily reach 3 times value on FanDuel, and that's a lot. 20 points, that goes a long way. He can get you 5 points just by running, so that's great. And also, I feel like Corey Davis is cheap enough too. You can stack that with Corey Davis for GPPs, but for cash game, I wouldn't mind using Mariota. But that's only if you I swear, you better be fitting in state of the art running backs there. You know what I mean? So, but other than that, I mean, I'm paying. I don't mind on FanDuel paying up for quarterbacks. Reason being is because if you are paying up, it's not going to hurt you a whole lot because there's other cheap flexes and positions that you can really punt at and stuff. But as well, I mean, I'm not paying up for Patrick Mahomes. I mean, he could be a great play on DraftKings, but on FanDuel, I just don't see it. I'm not paying. I think he's 9,500 on FanDuel. I'm not paying 9,500 for Patrick Mahomes when I can get Todd Gurley for, I think he's like 9,400. So I'll pass on that.
No love for Lamar Jackson at 7.5 going to Atlanta. Their terrible defense. Should be able to pass decently against them. Of course, he's got the great floor with his running ability. You got any love for Lamar Jackson this week, Jason?
I just rather go with the route of Jameis Winston, but Lamar Jackson is a good call at 7.4 because he does have a higher rushing upside than Jameis Winston. I don't think they'll run the ball 26 times like they did 2 weeks ago, but they will run the ball, and he could do well. Also, you don't have to worry about him getting pulled within like 4 interceptions, because Joe Flacco's already out, so the Ravens aren't going to go to anybody else.
Yep,
I think it's Joe Webb that's there. They're not going to go to him.
Yep.
Well, no, it's RG3.
Yeah, RG3.
RG3.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Tim, I'm going to go to you real quick. I got a question from Facebook here from Damian Porter. GPP option, any interest in Case Keenum in that good matchup against Cincinnati?
Yeah, you know what? I actually did have him on my list as a punt. I do think he's certainly interesting. I think the only reason you're playing him is because you're going to stack him with Manny Sanders or possibly a guy we talk about later. But I do think he's in play. As I mentioned with Cousins at 5,500, it's hard for me to justify that extra 200 in cash. But for GPPs, yeah, I definitely think he makes a low-owned stack.
Yeah, I agree.
Low dollar stack.
That Cincinnati defense makes everybody look good. So, yeah, I agree with that.
Hey, one quick note on that Cincinnati defense. You mentioned earlier about Lamar Jackson. I actually had him on my list, and I actually kind of took him off. And part of the reason is I think that the first 2 games, the teams he's played against, has made him look much better than he actually is. He got the Bengals at home, and then he got the Raiders at home, and now he's going on the road to Atlanta. Now, they're bad to the pass, but we saw him passing. It's not good. If he's going to rely on running on the road, I think he's going to struggle. So we might see Lamar Jackson regress a little bit in this game.
Yeah, I definitely heard that scenario because this is his first road start, obviously. It's in Atlanta, which even a bad team like Atlanta, they play so much better at home, even defensively. They're getting some of their pieces back from injuries. So that defense should have been better. They had a couple guys go on IR, so they've been terrible this year. But they are playing better of late, and in that dome, they play a lot better. So that's a good call. He could be some regression there for Lamar Jackson, and he'll probably be likely pretty high owned because he is still fairly cheap, and he's sort of the hot quarterback right now. All right. Anybody else we want to talk about before we move on to for tight ends?
No.
All right. Let's go ahead and jump into tight ends here. This time, Jason, we'll go to you first. We got a couple of the top tier guys. It's been a while that we've had some of these top tier guys on the slate at once. We got Travis Kelce, George Kittle, and Rob Gronkowski all on the slate with some second-tier guys like Jared Cook and Greg Olsen. Who do you like in this top tier for tight ends if you're paying up this week?
I really do like so you're going to pay up. You got to go to our boy Travis Kelce, All right, I guess I'll do it. I'll point out the elephant in the room. Kareem Hunt has been released from the Kansas City Chiefs. He's also put on the commissioner exempt list. So to me, that just helps out Travis Kelce. That brings more short passes to him. That brings more volume, more usage, more targets. He's going to get it all. So Travis Kelce at 7,800 on FanDuel, I don't mind paying up for that because, if you look at wide receivers, a lot of the wide receivers I like are around that 7,800 or 77,000 price range, so I could swap him for the tight end position if I want to pay up. So that's what I like as a top tight end, and that's the only top tight end I'll be paying for. Yeah,
I agree with FanDuel too as Travis Kelce or bust because I'm not going with Kittle in Seattle, and I'm not going to go with Rob Gronkowski. I know he played well last week, but it's Minnesota. It's a better defense, and you never know what's going to happen with him. What about over on DraftKings? Anything different over on DraftKings, Tim?
Nope, I think you guys nailed it. You pay up for Kelce, or I think you pay down this week.
Which seems to be we say a lot. We say that every week, just basically pay up at the one guy that's the top guy, and then if not, you're punting it completely.
Though I'll tell you, last week, a lot of people talked about Ertz versus Kittle. Like, they were pretty close. And if you played Kittle, you got burned. So
Yep, that's true.
Sometimes it seems like you really don't even know.
Yep.
Yeah, I got burned in on that because I was going Kittles all the way. I was like, man, I'm so excited. Like, who just got rolled out? Marquise Goodwin just got rolled out. You got freaking Pettis and this other guy named, I think his name's like Bourne or something like that. I don't remember.
Yeah. Kendrick Bourne.
I was like, all right, all the targets to Kittle, which is true. He did get 12 targets. He got 12 targets, but he just didn't do very much with them. So that's the downfall, And then Ertz had a pretty good game, didn't he? I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, he was like 22 points. He paid himself off.
Yeah, he definitely did.
I didn't have him a whole lot, so I was just like crying in my sleep.
All right. Let's go back to you, Jason. Let's talk about some of the mid-tier and lower end tight ends over on FanDuel. Anybody you like?
Yeah, man, I like Eric Ebron, man. Eric Ebron at 5.6 thousand. He's facing the Jaguars. Jalen Ramsey might be out for this game. So to me, I think that'll affect the defense a whole lot. So they'll have a lot more space down the middle, and because the cornerbacks are going to be focused and the safeties will be focused more on helping the cornerbacks out a little more. So that's going to help Eric Ebron get down the middle. But then again, he's also Mr. Red Zone. I mean, he gets targets in the red zone. He gets runs in the red zone. He gets it all, man. So you got to go Eric Ebron here at 5.6 thousand. He's actually my cash game tight end for sure if I'm not paying up.
All right. Yeah, I think I love that Eric Ebron call. And I know a guy that we talked about a little bit earlier in the year that was sort of the Eric Ebron vulture when Doyle was out, Mo Ali Cox, 6'5", 265 pound tight end. That's just a monster in the red zone. He's been ruled out, so that takes away that sort of vulture. I think he's got like 6 catches this year, but he has 2 touchdowns. So he could have been a vulture for Eric Ebron, but now that he's out, I think Eric Ebron gets all the red zone targets in there. So I love that Eric Ebron call against Jacksonville. And Jacksonville, the way you beat them is with the tight end, I believe. So good stuff there. What about over on DraftKings, Tim? What you got?
Yep, I definitely think Eric Ebron is the cash tight end on DraftKings too. He'll probably be the highest tight end ownership on the slate. A couple of pivots from him at similar price points. We finally saw David Njoku again last week, so I definitely think we can go back to him. Houston is a team that traditionally gives up a ton of points to the tight end, so I like that play. And then a guy lower is Greg Olsen. Again, we want to attack this Tampa Bay Buccaneer defense multiple different ways. He's gotten consistent targets since he's come back. 6, 6, 4, 3. At 4,100, you don't need a whole lot for him to pay off. And he'll be much lower owned than Ebron because they're so similar in price.
Yeah, that's a good call on Njoku. And just to sort of back up your point on the Houston Texans, they're actually 31st DVOA versus the tight end. So only one team worse than them in the league against the tight end. So definitely a great play there with Njoku. He got plenty of targets last week. Definitely love the Njoku call. So yeah, good stuff there. Anybody over on FanDuel that you want to talk about, Jason, that's a little bit cheaper on the cheaper end besides Eric Ebron?
To be honest, I only wrote down those 2 players because I felt like that's all I was going for.
What about Cameron Brate in that high-powered offensive game there?
Yeah, I don't like Cameron Brate yet. He's I think he's 4,600 on
4,900 on FanDuel.
Yeah, that's still pretty cheap to me. And considering he's the red zone target for Jameis Winston, he should get it. Last week he did pretty good in the first half. After that he disappeared, but I was happy because he got me that touchdown. And to me, how it works at tight end position this year, and this is what I've been doing for the last probably 4 or 5 weeks. I've been paying down at tight end, but except that I had a week where I paid up for Travis Kelce. But the reason why I've been paying down is because it's hit or miss. And if you get hit or miss and you don't get those points from your tight end, then you're kind of screwed. So I just paid down, and last week he paid off for me, so I was really happy in cash game. Dude, my cash game roster last week was fire. I got 195 points on DraftKings.
Wow.
So I cashed everywhere, all across the board. And I was kind of worried because all I had was morning players. So
yeah.
I was like looking at
I hate
roster,
that. I hate that when you got to sweat it out.
and I was like, oh,
Man, last week, man, you should have told me you were all over CMC. I didn't have him anywhere. With all the news that came out with running backs, I was like, I'm playing Breida and Edwards and Nick Chubb in every lineup, and they did okay. But if you didn't have CMC last week, you didn't make any money.
Yep.
You probably did the same mistake that like 60% of the field did. It was like, oh, I like CMC, but James Conner, man, he looks really good.
No, I didn't play any Conner.
Oh man,
no, it was all Chubb, Breida, and Gus Edwards.
Yeah, man. So I lucked out and I had him everywhere, but I kind of that's why I said you kind of made the same mistake everybody else did because I made that mistake in GPPs. Yeah. I went Conner and I didn't have CMC very much, but yeah, to get back on point, if I'm gonna pay down, I will pay down for Cameron Brate. Yeah, Cameron Brate. I like him, man. He gets targeted. Jameis Winston. That's Jameis Winston's boy right there.
Yep,
so
definitely.
Oh, and Deshaun Jackson's out.
Yep.
So
that helps him as well.
That puts more volume towards him. That actually helps out Chris Godwin too, but we'll get to that later.
There is one more guy I want to talk about, Tim, but let's go to you first. I know that it was mentioned in the chat here, and if you don't talk about him, I'll talk about him. But he's pretty cheap over on DraftKings.
Yeah, I won't have a lot of exposure, but just because of what he opens up. First of all, I love the Brate call. I'm going to have a lot of Brate as well. But I think on DraftKings, you got to take a look at Matt Lacoste. Obviously, he's taking over from Jeff Hireman as the tight end of the Broncos. And he got a touchdown last week, so obviously he's going to get some ownership, but he's 2,500. I mean, whenever you can pay minimum price for a guy that's going to be the starter and see even 5 targets, he's got to be in consideration. Now, as you mentioned, some value opened up to where I don't think that you necessarily need to punt tight end this week, but if you're going to punt tight end, I think he's the clear choice on DraftKings.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that at 100%. And the Bengals, I'm looking at their DVOA versus the tight end. They're actually pretty decent, but I think it's more of that they're so bad everywhere else that there's no reason to go to the tight end. They're just terrible everywhere else, so that tight ends don't get a whole lot of love. So I like that call as a minimum salary guy. If you're going to punt it, just go ahead and punt the hell out of it and get that extra value there.
Yeah, like you said earlier, if I was running a Keenum stack, if it was me, I would probably do Keenum, Sanders, and Lacoste.
Yeah, and that's a pretty cheap stack, and you definitely can build around that.
You can pay up for some of those other guys, yeah.
Yep, exactly. Good stuff. All right, I think we pretty much talked about the tight ends to death. Let's go ahead and move on to the defenses. And Jason, we'll start with you. What's your cash game defense this week, and who else do you like?
So this week in cash games, I don't really want to pay up for defense. The reason I say that is because the defense you are paying up for, I believe that, like, for example, look at Kansas City's defense. They're 4,300. While they are a good defense, they're not a great defense. They're on the road. I think they might get Eric Berry back this week, but I think that the Oakland Raiders can get a lot of garbage point touchdowns, and that'll kind of hurt them a lot. So to me, if I'm going to do it, I'm actually going to pay down on cash games, and I'm going to go down to Carolina Panthers against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I understand that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers can get a couple points here and there on them, but one thing that's guaranteed,
turnovers.
Like 7-Eleven being open is Jameis Winston throwing interceptions, baby. So if the Panthers can get me some interceptions, I'll be happy. And I believe this game's at Carolina, right?
It's in Tampa.
It's in Tampa. Well, I don't know if you guys saw that, but on like StubHub, they're like begging the fans to show up to the game.
Yeah, they're giving away tickets. I saw that.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, you don't really have a home field advantage. The Chargers have a better one, and we've seen their stadium. So, yeah, I mean, I like the Carolina Panthers. If you're going to pay down on FanDuel at 3.8. Yeah, I mean, there's other defense, but I'll let Tim take care of it.
All right, Tim, what you got over on DraftKings that you like?
Yeah, I think my number one defense and probably my cash game defense, as Jason just alluded to. Sorry, my bad. Is the Chiefs, man. I don't know if DraftKings is trolling us, but they're only 2,500. I know they're on the road, but they're like my number 4 projected defense, and they're like 15th in price.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So I don't know what they were doing, if they're just trying to mess with us.
On DraftKings, you play the Chief. I don't care what you say.
So I see a couple guys in the chat right now mentioning the Broncos. Like, we're talking about a team on the road against Driscoll versus a team on the road against Derek Carr? I mean, at this point, like, how much difference is there really? And you mentioned that, like, Driscoll even has the rushing floor. So it's like, no, I think they're the better team. I think they're the better defense in this situation. Give me the Chiefs.
Driscoll got like 2 touchdowns and a half, didn't he, last week? Like in a quarter?
Like, I honestly would trust Driscoll more than Carr at this point.
Oh, yeah, dude. Like,
that's thrown, certainly.
Yeah. I mean, also,
I'm going to mostly pay down. I will have some of my Packers this week. They're only 2,800 on DraftKings. They are at home, and they get Josh Rosen and the Cardinals coming to town. They won't be my cash game defense, but we're going to talk about Aaron Jones later. So I think in my Aaron Jones stacks, I'm going to have the Packers defense. And then in my Spencer Ware stacks, I'm going to have the Chiefs defense.
Yeah, it's good stuff there. I love all those calls there. And there's really no one that I really wanted to add to that list. I mean, if you wanted to pay up, there are some teams you can pay up for. You could go up to Chicago if you wanted to. You can go up to Seattle if you wanted to. There's a couple of them. Green Bay is probably a decent choice if you wanted to go up there against Arizona. But with those options that y'all mentioned, I don't think there's any reason to pay up for defense. Save the money and pay up elsewhere. And there's really no one that I wanted to add to that list. The only one I would consider And actually, I probably wouldn't even consider them just because they're playing at home, and that would be the Vikings versus the Patriots. If this was on the road, it'd be a better matchup. The Patriots are kind of struggling on the road a little bit, but being at home, I think that helps them quite a bit. So even the Vikings being so cheap on FanDuel, I think I would avoid them as well.
I think the Rams are interesting at 2,600 on DraftKings, but as I mentioned, that's more than the Chiefs and barely less than the Broncos. But Matt Stafford, even at home this year, he's had some bad games.
Yes, he has.
So, I mean, you're talking about a team that gets good pressure on the quarterback and against a quarterback who hasn't looked as good this year. I know I mentioned Stafford earlier as a play because I think he's in play for stacks. But I would say it's just as likely that it goes the other way and he ends up getting killed and the Rams defense pays off salary.
Yep, exactly. It's sort of the Rams offense is kind of like what the Saints offense is their offense is almost their defense because they force you to be one-dimensional and play catch-up. And if they're doing that and you got to throw the ball 50 times a game, they just tee off on the quarterback and they sit back there in that zone coverage and just pick off some interceptions. So their offense is probably their best defense in that sense. And they got some great pass rushers there. So, yeah, that's a good call. And they can't protect Stafford. I think Stafford a few weeks ago he got sacked like 10 times or something. That's just ridiculous number of sacks.
Yeah, it was awesome. Speaking of Stafford getting sacked 10 times, it was 11 times by the Tennessee Titans. We threw a lot of defenses out there. Excuse me if I missed it, but did we bring up the Tennessee Titans defense?
We did not.
Okay, so the Tennessee Titans defense, they're playing the New York Jets. They don't know who's going to start yet. It's either going to be McCown or what's the other guy, the quarterback, Darnold. So I like the Tennessee Titans defense this week as well. I like them more in GPP than I do cash games. I believe they're going to be great. They have an adjusted sack rate. I have it right here if I can find it. An adjusted sack rate of 11.9%. That means like for every 11.9 dropbacks, they get a sack. Against the Jets. That's their percentage. That's how bad the Jets line is. They don't have any running backs. They don't have all their wide receivers are banged up. I can easily see this being a great game for the Tennessee Titans. And the Titans on FanDuel, I believe they're like 4,200. They're not that expensive. Let me double check here. I'm going page to page here. I wish I had more than one screen, but I'm not rich like Jeff.
Split screen.
Sorry, Jeff. We don't all take down tournaments like you, and let's see here.
While you're looking that up, I'm gonna go to Tim real quick. Any love for the Colts defense against Cody Kessler in Jacksonville?
I don't know. They're not really in play for me. I mean, we've already mentioned so many of those low-dollar defenses I think are in better spots. I mean, I think they're in play, but can you really make a better case for them than the Rams or, the Chiefs or even the Broncos? I don't know. I think that all of those defenses are better defenses, so I don't think their quarterback situation is that much better.
Yeah. Their middle linebacker actually went out last week at halftime with an injury, so I don't think he came back. So their middle linebacker is actually a candidate for Rookie of the Year, so defensive Rookie of the Year. So you got to be on the lookout for that. If he doesn't come back, that's when how do I say this? That's when the Colts really sucked and they allowed like 30 points, 25 points, and without him, they're really nothing. So yeah, the Tennessee Titans, they're 4,400. Sorry.
Yeah.
All right. Just kind of talking about this defense is kind of made me realize something too. There was a shit ton of backup quarterbacks playing this week. We got Driscoll. We got Cody Kessler. We got who else do we have playing? Of course, Lamar Jackson is kind of a backup quarterback. I mean, it's just crazy how many backups. McCown's a backup quarterback. So there's a lot of choices there for defenses this week. So,
how about your precious 49ers, my friend?
I said backups. That's a third rounder. He's a third stringer. Yeah, he's a backup to the backup. We didn't get that far.
There's levels to this, right?
Yeah. All right. Real quick before we go to break, I just wanted to promo something really quick. I know this is an NFL podcast and we don't talk much NBA, but we do play NBA. And we have a contest right now for goingfor2.com. It's the DFS Miss Nutcracker. It's a $5 entry. We're hoping to get the max entries that we possibly can, which is 200. If you want to join the contest, just visit goingfor2.com/nutcracker. You can join the contest. It's $5. I'll send the invites out as soon as DraftKings opens the contest for us. And if we can get the people in there to have a pretty good game, something to watch on Christmas Day, it should be a lot of fun. So definitely check that out. Goingfor2.com/nutcracker. And with that said, let's go ahead and hit our commercial.
That's one of my favorites.
Fantasy football. It's not just a social interaction anymore. It's Today's manager plays to win, and the difference between winning and losing is so small, a manager will do whatever it takes to get an edge. Yet the other sites offer the same content at an extremely high cost. It's time to get away from the old and step into the future of fantasy stats. This is StatRoute. StatRoute allows you to find any data set for any player or team in 7 seconds or less, all on a simple, easy-to-use application. Want to see which running back performed best in the snow last season? How about the past 5 seasons? And in the fourth quarter? Or maybe you're unsure of which quarterback to start for the upcoming week. With our Stats IP technology, you can now quickly see how Matt Stafford has performed in the rain, during the second half of the season, in New York, compared with how Russell Wilson has played during primetime games, at home, versus the Rams' new defensive coordinator, Wade Phillips. At StatRoute, it's our mission to deliver state-of-the-art technology, guaranteed to keep you ahead of the curve. So, whether you're a casual football fan, a weekly fantasy trash talker, or a DFS hustler, we've got you covered. Welcome to the new standard for stats delivery. We are StatRoute. Take back your league.
This is it, what? Lucini pouring from the sky, let's get rich, what?
All right, guys, welcome back. First and foremost, we want to thank our sponsor, StatRoute.com. New standard for fantasy stats, any stat, any player, anytime. Use promo code G42FF to save 25% off. They are actually going to be launching their NBA product here pretty soon. So if you play NBA DFS, you want to get on that. Or even if you play season-long leagues, they're an excellent stat company. They do things like how a quarterback performs in weather or how running backs perform in certain weather conditions, first half, second half kind of stuff. So some great stuff there that I use all the time for my lineups. All right, guys. Now we're going to be down to the positions that we love to talk about the most. We'll start with running backs. And, of course, we got some great breaking news before the podcast went live. Not great for Kareem Hunt, at least, but great if you're a DFS player because it opens all kinds of value. Kareem Hunt, of course, is no longer with the Chiefs, but he's been released. With that said, Jason, we'll go to you first. Obviously, Spencer Ware is going to be the chalk play here, but is there anybody else that we want to talk about at running back?
We're going to top price, right? Top value, like top.
Yep. Yeah, whatever you want to talk about. Just whatever you want. You got the floor.
Okay, well, I'm going to go top tier here, man. I'm going to go back to CMC from last week on FanDuel. Now, some people will argue with me and be like, oh, what about Todd Gurley? I'm going to say, well, you know what? I like CMC. So, CMC is going, that's Christian McCaffrey, by the way, people. Sorry, I realize not everybody knows him like that. Yeah, he's going up against the Buccaneers. Their 27th DVOA run, their 18th DVOA pass in the league. To me, that's a recipe for success right there. I think he can get me, as my boy Al Smith called it. He calls it the triple double of the NFL. I think he can get me 100 yards on the ground and in the air. So, and a touchdown. I think he can do that easily. And at 8.8, I like that. So I'll take that all the way. And that team's implied team total is about 29 points, and the game total is 54.5, and the pace for that game is going to be ridiculous. It's going to go back and forth. I'm mass multi-entering this week, so you can bet your bottom dollar that I'm going to have all the players in this game. It's going to be the nuts. I'm excited for this game, and I'm going to have CMC stacked with Cam Newton. So, yeah, I mean, you can even play that in cash games if you want. So I don't see any risk with that because a lot of the volume is centered around those two players. It's either one's going to run in, the ball. It's either going to be Cam Newton or CMC. And if not, CMC's been getting a lot of the goal line usage in the red zone a lot as of late. They've been running the ball less with Newton, so I like that. And he's been running up the middle, too. He's not just running on the outside. They're using him everywhere, so I like that for usage. And at 8.8, it's a discount compared to what Gurley is. I think he's 9.5, so, yeah, I like that on FanDuel.
Yeah, I like Christian McCaffrey. He used to be a guy that you'd only play in DraftKings because he didn't get the touchdowns. He didn't, his points per reception is what you really wanted. But now he's getting the volume in the running game as well. Obviously, he's still getting the passes, and he's getting the touchdowns now, too. I think he's got 5 touchdowns, or four over the last 5 weeks. So he's getting in the end zone now as well. So that really adds to his value. In PPR leagues, at least I know in my season-long league, he's only 0.3 points per game lower than Todd Gurley right now. So he's actually put up some monster stats. Not quite as good on FanDuel because of the points per reception aren't there, but he's been playing out of his mind this year. What about over on DraftKings, Tim? What you got?
Yeah, I think Jason nailed it. I think with the news that came out today with Spencer Ware, I think it changes lineup construction a little bit. I think previously I was either going to pick Gurley or Christian McCaffrey, play one of the mid-range guys, and then play somebody like Carlos Hyde. But I think that even with him being more expensive, I think I'm going to try and pay up for both guys on DraftKings this week. I'm going to try and go Gurley, Christian McCaffrey, and Spencer Ware, and then try and find the value in around it. But if I don't end up going that route, it's going to be because I pay for Aaron Jones. I mentioned him earlier. I think he's finally starting to get the usage that many people wanted him to get for quite some time. He's 6,700 on DraftKings, so he's a noticeable discount over those top two guys. And maybe he doesn't have quite their, floor, but I think he has a ton of upside. So I definitely am going to be.
Aaron Jones is 6,700 on DraftKings?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, you better lock that in, man. That's awesome.
So, I agree. So that's what I'm saying. It makes the decision of playing two of those top guys much harder if you get Aaron Jones at what I consider a discount.
Especially against the Arizona Cardinals, too, because their run defense is just not very good. Their pass defense is pretty good.
I read that they're the number one in rush attempts given up by like a mile. It's not even close.
Wow.
I don't have the exact stat in front of me, but sometimes my Packers don't do what seems like the most obvious thing.
Yeah.
But I think in this case, like they did it against Miami, so I am confident that they look at this situation similarly and say this is an Aaron Jones game.
Yeah, I agree 100% because that Cardinals defense is pretty good in the secondary. They put Peterson to shadow Adams. I think that takes away at least one of the options to some degree. I mean, Adams will still get his, but if they run Aaron Jones, they just can't stop that. I think that's the way to beat them for sure. I think it'll be an ugly-sided game anyway, so I think Packers get up big, and then Aaron Jones can close it out in the fourth quarter with a ton of runs and get that fourth-quarter usage.
Oh, yeah. The Arizona Cardinals have allowed 132 yards per game for the last 4 weeks, so I like that a lot, man. He's going to eat, and they've allowed also 48 yards receiving to running backs too. So Aaron Jones is a great call. He's going to eat, man. I can't wait. Also for GPPs and cash games, you can play them both ways.
Agreed.
All right. While we're talking about Aaron Jones, we have a question on Facebook about him from Aaron Rasmus. I hope I said that right. For Jones's price, do you think Lindsey's a better value, or who do you think is a better value, Lindsey or Jones?
Ooh.
I have him very close. Actually, Phil Lindsay was the next guy on my list that I wanted to talk about because I think somebody mentioned earlier about paying down to like Keenum for quarterback. I assume that if you're going to do something like that, it's because you want to fit three of these guys and not pay down. So if you want to go Gurley, CMC, and then Lindsey, or Jones and CMC and Lindsey, I think that's a viable strategy this week. In terms of raw points per dollar, I think that Lindsey is the better play, but I think the upside of Jones is so much higher that I'm willing to give up slightly better value for the higher ceiling.
Yeah, because when you get in the red zone, you don't have Royce Freeman coming in and taking up your usage there. Well, yeah, for Aaron Jones, that is. Because Aaron Jones, he's just a workhorse now. They're not looking to what's that other? Is it Jamal Williams? They're not looking at Jamal Williams.
Not at all.
Ty Montgomery's gone.
They basically bring Jamal Williams in for pass protection. That's really it. I think he got like a couple touches last week, and that was it. Like, he's on the team for pass protection and special teams.
Yep.
If anybody knows the Packers better, it's this guy right here, Tim. So I'll take his word for it. I like it. And like you were saying, point per dollar on FanDuel, it actually works out as well. Phil Lindsay's 7,000 and Aaron Jones is 7,600. So it just depends which way you want to go. But I mean, you can stack both of those with their defenses if you want a good correlation. But it's not that high of a grade of correlation, but it's good enough.
Yeah, good stuff there, guys. I like all those calls. I don't have too many mid-range guys that I like that y'all haven't already talked about, so we're going to go ahead and move into the values. Obviously, Spencer Ware is there. We won't talk about him too much, but we'll go to you first, Tim, on DraftKings. Who else you got besides Spencer Ware?
Yeah. Well, one guy I was pretty high on before today was Gus Edwards. All year, we've pretty much been picking on running backs against the Falcons. We usually prefer to go with the pass-catching backs, but we saw what Chubb did to them a couple of weeks ago, and he got most of his work done on the ground. He had, 23 touches last week, 17 touches before. He is questionable, but I do expect that he's going to play. So I think that at 4,800, he makes an interesting play. And then the only other guy I have to mention, or I guess two guys really, is Carlos Hyde and TJ Yeldon. Obviously, Fournette is out this week because of the suspension, and they're going to be playing the Indianapolis Colts, which are pretty giving to the running back position. As I mentioned earlier, going into today, I was seriously considering Carlos Hyde for cash, not as much of a GPP because I don't think he has a great ceiling. But I think I'm kind of off that play now. I think if I'm going to be – wait, go ahead.
There's 3,600, right?
Yeah, 3,600.
No,
for 3,300. Cash. Sorry.
Wow, 3,300. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, if it wasn't for the Ware news, I think he was pretty much a lock in cash. I guess technically you can still run both of those guys if you're just going to pay up at tight end or wide receiver, but I don't think that's optimal this week. Maybe use Yeldon and GPP. Somebody mentioned earlier, they're going to have to be playing catch up in this game, and I agree. So I think that suits Yeldon much better than Hyde.
Yeah, there is one other guy, and he's mostly DraftKings, so I'll bring him up now before we get to FanDuel, and that's Theo Riddick. I think Theo Riddick with the Rams and that high total in that game is going to be up and down the field. We already talked about they can't protect Matthew Stafford, so it's going to be check down city. I mean, he can have 13, 14 targets in this game easy. So I think Theo Riddick will be a low-key, sort of low-owned player with some of the guys we've already talked about being a little bit higher-owned. Theo Riddick has been quietly doing his thing in Detroit there with Tate gone. He lines up, I think, 50% of his snaps in the slot, so he's getting a ton of usage there. Obviously, he gets a couple carries here and there, but he's definitely their receiving running back, and with the Rams coming to town, they're going to need to pass the ball a lot. So Theo Riddick's my guy on DraftKings. All right, Jason.
He's got 3 carries in 4 weeks. When are they going to give him dual position eligibility on DraftKings?
Exactly.
I don't understand this. Make the guy a wide receiver already.
Agreed.
I need it.
I think he is playing almost more snaps in the receiver position than he is at running back. So yeah, that's definitely a good call. All right, Jason. What about over on FanDuel? Anybody else outside of what we talked about already on FanDuel that you like?
I don't have dirt cheap value, but I do have kind of a mid-range value play. His name is Chris Carson, and I like him a lot. He's 6.3 on FanDuel. To me, that's the perfect recipe right there because one thing that the Seattle Seahawks love doing is they love running the ball.
Yep.
And they love running the ball with him, and they give him all the usage in the red zone. They don't give it to Rashad Penny. They don't give it to Mike Davis. They give it to him. So when they're in that red zone and they run it in, they punch it in with him. So I love that. And I really like the fact that he's a workhorse there. Yeah, he loses some carries here and there, but in reality, if you really watch the game, you know that they're not very, they're not valuable carries that he's missing. They're more like you get a breather here and there,
Right.
So it's not like they're taking him out at the red zone, So I like it. I like Chris Carson at 6.3 on FanDuel. The one thing is Tim mentioned is he said Carlos Hyde and TJ Yeldon on for DraftKings. I'll go out on a limb here and say that that's more of a DraftKings play because you're not going to get the volume and usage at 5.3 with Spencer Ware that you would get from TJ Yeldon and those guys. So I don't see no reason to pay down for TJ Yeldon or Carlos Hyde. Carlos Hyde is 5,000. Don't go to that. Just go straight to Ware. Unless you want to be contrarian and you want to go put Carlos Hyde in your GPPs, go ahead. But to me, I wouldn't advise that. I just stick to Spencer Ware. That's my cheap running back right there. I'm gonna have him everywhere and anywhere.
Yep, I'm agreed. And I'm gonna go back to that Chris Carson call. I love that call. Of course, I'm a Niners fan, so I know how bad our defense could be. We're going to Seattle this week. We're a 10-point underdog. You have a home game and you're favored by 10 points. Running backs will always be the guy that closes it out. So I think in the fourth quarter when they're up by 10, 12, 14 points, it'll be Chris Carson just grinding out yardage after yardage, and I think that helps you a lot in DFS. So love that Chris Carson call. We did have another question on Facebook here. Thoughts on Shady McCoy or Kenyon Drake, and then Gore for GPP. So 3 guys there, Shady McCoy, Drake, and Gore. Jason, we'll go to you first. That bad, huh?
I don't really like it. I'm sorry. Kenyon Drake last week, he was just one more tackle away from breaking his arm. who is it? Shady McCoy was the other one?
Shady McCoy and then Gore.
Actually, you know what? Shady McCoy could be sneaky if you think about it on DK. I believe he's dirt cheap on DK as well. If you look at it, the Dolphins are one of the worst run defense. If I look at it right here, let me pull up the DVOA real
He's
quick.
4,900.
Yeah, that's
not super cheap.
I don't know. Do you think? Because you think about it.
This is the lowest over/under game on the slate. The over/under is 40. So there's not going to be a lot of touchdowns scored. Even if he gets a good number of points, I just don't see the upside versus similarly priced guys. Like, who are you going to pick him over? You know what I mean? Like, he's 600 or 500 less than Phil Lindsay. I prefer him. He's basically the same price as Gus Edwards, and I think I prefer him. So, I mean, I think of those three guys, I prefer McCoy, but I don't really see a situation where I would play any of the three.
Oh, man, totally shut me down, bro.
That's how we do it here. We don't just agree with each other, man.
Those are all valid points, but I mean, he gave us three options here, so I'm taking Shady McCoy. You know what I mean? So, I don't. And then who was the third one again?
That was Gore. So Drake/Gore, basically.
Oh, okay. It just depends. If he's ruled out, Kenyon Drake, Gore should be cheap enough. You can play him here and there, but none of those guys I would recommend just paying down for. I mean, to me, like I'm telling you, people, just play Spencer Ware. He's playing the Oakland Raiders, and if you don't believe me, I've seen the Raiders play like 7 times this week. All those other games, I just stopped watching. I'm like, nope, I'm done. They suck. They don't even care no more. So just play Spencer Ware. But I mean, if you want to, you can play Shady McCoy, but just listen to Tim. He's good.
All right, good stuff. Is there anybody else here at the running position that we talk about before we move on to wide receivers? Anybody?
I got nothing,
going
man.
twice.
That's pretty much all I was looking at.
All right, we'll go to you, Tim, first with wide receivers. Let's go top tier receivers. Who are you paying up for this week? Are you paying up this week?
Oh,
yeah,
wait. Wait. Sorry. I do have one more player. We totally missed that. Saquon Barkley.
Oh, yeah, good call.
I am going to play Saquon Barkley. I don't care what he's priced at. Well, actually, I do, but he's 8,600 on FanDuel, and I understand, that's a lot. But the Giants' defense did give up a touchdown. They gave up 25 DraftKings points to Tariq Cohen. And to me, I mean, not to be rude, but Saquon Barkley, you're right, is 2 times the size of that guy.
Yeah.
And he's going to get his, and they're at home. They're at home. I like that when they're at home. Also, he gets the passing down receptions, and they're going to target him a lot. They're going to use him a lot. He's 8,600. I believe he's 7,900 on DK. Is that correct?
Yep.
So I mean, that's dirt cheap. 7,900. That's a discount right there. I would take that and run with that all day.
Yeah, I think Saquon. This is kind of going to be, I think, probably the toughest spot for him since week 1. They're number 1 DVOA against the run, and then 10th DVOA against pass catching running backs. But they're going to scheme, in my opinion, for Saquon. So if he comes into this game and he's still able to get it done, he's basically matchup proof at this point.
Yep, agreed 100%. I like Saquon because I think he'll be lower owned because they are playing the Bears, so you can get him at a low ownership at a pretty good price. And if he has a typical Saquon Barkley game, you're pretty much money at that point. All right, Tim.
Yep.
Before we got Gersoned, as I'm going to call it, because Gerson always does that. Wait, one more thing. I think Jason's trying to pull his best Gerson impression, so we just got Gersoned. We'll go to Tim here for your top 2 receivers over on DraftKings.
Yeah, well, I did it again. Jason mentioned it earlier, but everything really this week comes down to relative pricing, right? So I love Tyreek Hill this week, but he's 9,100, right? So he's more expensive than Christian McCaffrey and $200 less than Todd Gurley. So it's going to be really hard for me to pay up for Tyreek Hill in anything but a Mahomes GPP stack. So I definitely wouldn't recommend him for cash. I probably won't have a high allocation in tournaments. He'll obviously be in my Mahomes stacks. But if I'm going to pay up for a one wide receiver this week, it's going to be DeAndre Hopkins. I just feel like every week this guy gets it done. I think he's number 1 in the league in terms of catch rate. He just gets tons of targets every week. He's one of the safest plays, I think, in DFS. The only way I may move off of Hopkins is if Diggs is officially ruled out before lock and I can get Adam Thielen for 200 less. That's pretty much where I'm looking. Otherwise, I'm probably going to be paying down a bit at wide receiver.
All right, good stuff there. Love Hopkins. Hill's a little bit pricey for me over on DraftKings as well, so I think I might have him in some home
It's crazy to see a 9K receiver, man.
Yeah, it really is.
Especially with the volume he gets. Like, only he could do that.
Yep, exactly. All right, Jason, what about over on FanDuel? Anybody besides who we mentioned already?
He mentioned Adam Thielen. I'll pay up for Adam Thielen on FanDuel, and it's not really paying up for him per se. He's 8.1, I believe, if I'm looking at my notes correct. Yeah, he's 8.1 thousand, but yeah, it's just he's a target monster, man. He went like 8 games with 100 yards, over 100 yards. He almost broke that Calvin Johnson record, and he tied it, but. I mean, and it was great, and I like him. I mean, Kirk Cousins is just going to throw the ball. They're not going to run the ball against the Patriots. They're just going to throw the ball, and that's all they've been doing for the whole season so far. Dalvin Cook's doesn't look the same, and I just like Adam Thielen a lot. I like that other call with Hopkins too. So I mean, there's a lot of great plays on this slate at wide receivers, but it's not within this range. It's not in the upper tier range. I mean, you can play Julio Jones, but I think that Jimmy Smith, he's pretty good, and that Baltimore defense is pretty stingy as well. But Julio Jones on DK, I don't mind him, actually. I like him on DK. He's always I swear he's like a guaranteed 20 points every week, no matter what.
Yeah, he's
so take it and run. But, I mean, on FanDuel, maybe I'll poke him with what's the saying? They say a 10-foot pole. I'll poke him with this maybe like a 6-foot pole. I mean, that'll be good enough for me,
Good stuff.
Hey, man, before we move out of the elite players, I got to give Jeff a shout-out real quick. I don't know if you were about to talk about your boy, but if you weren't, I'm gonna. Because Mike Evans finally showed up, y'all.
Finally.
He is in the building.
Finally. It had to happen. I talked about him every week this season. It finally happened, man. I feel good.
Yeah, so we haven't been on the show a couple weeks. You called it out 2 weeks ago. He had 33 DraftKings points. And then obviously last week, San Francisco, he had 20 DraftKings points. I don't necessarily think that I'm going to have a lot of Evans, but if he went out and had another close to 30-point game, I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, I think
it's good to finally see him catching the ball. That's been a struggle for him.
How much is he on DraftKings?
8,100.
Oh wow, he's actually pretty cheap on.
Yeah,
FanDuel.
so he's more than Julio. He's more than Thielen. He's 100 less than Hopkins.
Yeah, he's 7,900 on FanDuel. I like that. I mean, you can correlate that with DJ Moore, even though Funchess is back, and you can correlate that with the other side, and you can go back and forth and get some pretty good amount of points. Just like you were talking about earlier, you had T.Y. Hilton and you had DJ Moore 2 weeks ago. That was a great correlation. If you stack that game, then you had a great GPP roster. So I like that.
Yep, good stuff there. Good stuff. I had a train of thought and I just kind of lost it. So we're gonna go ahead and go to mid-tier receivers until I think of what I was gonna say. We'll start over on FanDuel this time, Jason. Who you got for your mid-tier receivers?
My mid-tier receivers is Robert Woods. He's lining up in the slot. The Lions don't bring Darius Slay ever into the slot, and the Lions also have one of the worst slot cornerbacks in the league. To me, Robert Woods at I think he's 7.3.
Yep, 7.3.
I wrote my notes down, and I didn't realize how crappy my handwriting was until I tried to read it on the air.
Hey, Jason, it's 2018, man. Get an iPad.
Man, I got every tablet you can think of, but I was doing this, and I'm old school, man. I like writing it down. I don't know why. I feel like it sticks in my head more. And so I wrote it down, and yeah, he's 7.3. I like him. Josh Reynolds is on the outside. Then you got Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks would probably be getting the Darius Slay treatment. So I like Robert Woods. And also Robert Woods, they use him a lot in the red zone. I don't know if you guys watched that KC matchup, but they were picking on the KC cornerbacks in the red zone, and they were going just to Robert Woods over and over and over.
Yep, agreed. All right, Tim, what you got over on mid-range on DraftKings?
Yep, I have 4 guys listed for mid-range wide receiver, and all 4 of them are staples of this show. So we're going to go right on brand here. Robert Woods, as Jason just mentioned. Kenny Golladay, as he just mentioned. DJ Moore, who we've mentioned multiple times in this show and just said it again. And then Jeff's guy, Corey Davis. So all 4 of those guys, I think, are firmly in play this week. So, I mean, if I'm looking at mid-range, I'm almost guaranteed to have one of those 4 guys. They're all in great spots this week.
Yeah, good call there. I can't pull up Corey Davis' stats, so I'm just going to go off my season-long stats because I actually own him in season-long Dynasty League. And Corey Davis, in the last 4 games that Mariota has actually played full games, he's basically a wide receiver 1. He's got, I think, 26 points, 23 points, and 12 points, I believe, in PPR format. So The one game that he didn't play well was against the Colts, but that's the one that Mariota got hurt, so that's why he did play well in that game. So I love me some Davis this week, especially on DraftKings because he gets that PPR sort of bonus because he gets tons and tons of targets in that offense. So good stuff there. All right, let's go down into the cheap. Let's go down, dig deep. Jason, who you got over on FanDuel? I think we may have lost Jason. All right, we'll come back to Jason.
No, I'm here, bro.
All right.
I got him.
All right. We're cutting in and out there. I think we're good now. We lost a little bit of connection, but I think we're good now.
No, I got Corey Davis, man. Corey Davis is cheap on FanDuel as well. He's 5.9. 5.9, man. I'm playing him everywhere. I like Corey Davis. I got it right here. I mean, he's been getting red zone targets. He got,
did our video just end? Because mine says live video has ended.
I think we may have split again because it's still live over on my side.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, we're good, guys. Remember, it wouldn't be a podcast without technical difficulties on the going for 2 podcasts.
Yep, I'm gonna be hardwiring this computer here pretty soon because it's the Wi-Fi that keeps cutting us off.
We're gonna have to agree to disagree on that. Trust me, I know technology pretty well, and unless you're like in a dungeon downstairs in the basement, then yeah. But other than that, I mean, we'll see. But anyways, back on Corey Davis against the Patriots, he got 2 red zone targets. Against Dallas, he got 2. Against the Chargers, he got 3. And in the last 2 games, we'll have to ignore that Colts game. That was just abysmal. That was just a horrible game because I think Mariota got hurt at halftime.
Yep.
And then in that last week game, I mean, he was a beast. I mean, he got 4 targets, and not only did he catch all those 4 targets, he went 96 yards and a touchdown. So he's a very kind of like Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas has a catch rate of 90%. So Davis is making the best of all his catches. So I like him this week at 5.9.
Good stuff. All right, Tim, over on DK, anybody you digging deep on?
Yeah, there's a couple guys. One guy you already mentioned is Josh Reynolds. Obviously, he's going to be a benefit of the extra snaps with Kupp out for the season. He had 20 points in the last game. I think he's probably going to be in a good spot because, as we mentioned, we do expect Slay to shadow Woods. So I think he's in a good spot for 4,900. And then 2 guys I think are getting a lot of love this week, and for good reason, are Adam Humphries and Chris Godwin. I think personally I'm going to prefer Adam Humphries, but I feel like every time I don't play Chris Godwin, he goes off. So don't let me dissuade you from playing Chris Godwin. I think they're both in play. Winston's going to have to throw in this game. You attack Carolina through the air. We saw what David Moore did last week and Tyler Lockett against this defense, so I think it's going to be similar. You're going to want a ton of exposure, as Jason mentioned earlier. And then I'm going to kind of go down narrative street here a little bit. I made this call a couple weeks ago. It worked out, and so I'm going to go back to it. The Dante Moncrief revenge narrative playing against his old team, the Indianapolis Colts. In the last game, he had 4 for 98 and a touchdown, had 18 DraftKings points. He's 4,500, so he's a little bit more expensive than he was then. But he's a little cheaper. He's 4,700 then. But it's some of the spots down here are just not great. And I think that he's probably nobody's going to have him. I almost considered making him my sit call, but I think my sit call is even sicker. So, and then one other guy I got to mention, man, because Jeff, you just have this talent, man. You pick a sit call, and then a couple weeks later, that guy's just right on the slate. So we're going to go to your boy Marcel Aitman, man. I mean, the Oakland Raiders are just running out of people to throw the ball to, and then this guy comes out of nowhere with 10 targets last week. So it's not the best situation, but they're obviously going to have to be playing from behind and throwing against this Rams team. So for 3,600 on DraftKings, I think that you could probably do a lot worse than him. I obviously don't think he's going to get 10 targets, but what do you need? 5, 6, 7
at
3,600 to pay off value?
Yep.
So I think he's firmly in play as well.
Good stuff. And the 2 calls that you mentioned with Humphries and Godwin actually reminded me of what I wanted to talk about when you were talking about Mike Evans. The Carolina Panthers, I think I just wrote my my article for Fantasy Pros before we came on show here. And the Panthers have given up more big plays, which is 40 yards or more in the passing game, than any other team in the league right now. So if you're looking at Godwin being a sort of a big play receiver, I think that he can kind of be sneaky there at 3,900 on DraftKings. He might get that big play. So the Panthers defense is not, kind of what we thought about in the past. as being a good defense. They're a good run defense, but pass defense, they've been struggling a little bit. So love those two calls as well. All right, it is time for our Stack in the Box.
Hey,
Oh,
it's all right. Let it go.
Talk a little bit about stacking. Pass catching running backs, tight ends, wide receiver ones or twos, whatever it is.
On stacking, it really depends on how you want to do it. Okay, so we have a running back, wide receiver stack.
If you're expecting that your, say, quarterback and wide receiver one are going to go off.
Tim, can you explain what it means to go naked with your quarterback?
all right. Stack of the week here, going with Mr. Tim Strobel. You had something you want to talk about before we went on to that break there. What you got?
Yeah, just real quick, Sammy Watkins was ruled out for this game, so I think that makes Chris Conley in play. I don't think he's a great play, but if I mentioned Aitman, I feel like I have to mention Conley.
Good call.
Because I think they're both in play if you're going to look for one of those punt sub K4 wide receivers. So anyway, just wanted to mention Conley before we moved on.
All right, so who's your stack of the week?
Well, we've mentioned it multiple times on this show. I think it's going to be a popular stack, but I'm going to go it to anyway. It's going to be Jameis Winston to Cam Brate and then run it back with Christian McCaffrey. I think that the way you attack this Panthers defense is through the air, and they've been just terrible. I think it's 30th DVOA against the tight end. So I think that, and obviously O.J. Howard is out at this point. He got a touchdown last week, and I think this is an even better spot. So Winston, Brate, run it back with CMC. That is my stack.
All right, good stuff. Jason, over on FanDuel, who is your stack of the week?
For me, I'm going to go with Andrew Luck and T.Y. Hilton. I think it'll be one of the lower owned stacks, but I believe like right now they're clicking. And last week, T.Y. Hilton, he had a couple big runs and he could have broke them off, but that freaking guy, Xavier Howard, he's so good, man. He should cut him off. Like I could have swore I've never seen someone catch up to T.Y. Hilton.
Yeah.
And he did it. And I was like, wow. But I mean, you give me T.Y. Hilton, this week he's gonna go off. I got a good feeling about him. He's gonna be one of my higher owned players this week, and I like that stack a lot, especially because Andrew Luck just throwing the ball, and Marlon Mack's questionable, and if Mack doesn't return, then they're gonna go to Hines, and they're just gonna throw the ball to him as well.
I think Mack will be back. I think he was a full practice today, if I'm not mistaken. Tim, did you check that today? Did you see Mack?
I do. I'm pretty sure he practiced in full. Yeah.
All right, so I think Mack does come back, but I still don't think it hurts Luck. It might actually help Luck a little bit to balance that offense out. So I love that Luck and T.Y. Hilton. Of course, I sort of skipped out on that 2 weeks ago with Tim's call, and I wish I had stacked it because that would have been money. I do like the call that Tim made as well. That was probably going to be my number one stack with that game there. But just to be different, I'm going to go with a different stack that I also like. Jared Goff, Robert Woods, and then run it back with Kenny Golladay. I think it's going to be a high-scoring affair. I think the Lions will be coming back for playing catch-up all game basically. So Golladay is basically all they have as a receiver. Theo Riddick is their number two receiver basically in this offense. So Golladay is going to get some targets there. Of course, Robert Woods is now the preferred target for Jared Goff, and they're coming off a bye, so they should be ready to go. All right, it is time for the sick call of the week, and we'll start with Mr. Tim Strobel. Who is your sick call of the week?
Man, fellas, I got to admit, this one's pretty sick, but I think I'm going to roll with it this week. Over the last 2 weeks, the New York Jets have given up over 200 yards on the ground. The Tennessee Titans are an 8-point favorite at home. So this is a guy who's fallen out of favor with a lot of DFS players, but I'm going to throw him in at least one lineup this week, Derrick Henry. I think that this might be one of those rare Derrick Henry where they lean on him type of games. You always want to favor a home running back when they're favored by more than 7 points. You obviously you look at his touches and you're seeing 10, 12, 13 touches a week. It's a little bit scary, even for 3,800, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if they leaned on Derrick Henry this week. And at 3,800, he will be, a low-owned, low-cost pivot.
Yeah, just talking about Derrick Henry, I listened to a lot of podcasts, and I'm not sure which one I heard this on, but it was kind of a crazy stat. They basically said that they did a poll of running backs that have carried the ball at X amount of times, and percentage of them getting a positive gain. Derrick Henry actually led that list with 88% of his carries went for a positive gain. Now, it may have been a fall forward for 1 yard, but still a positive game. So it's kind of crazy. You wouldn't think of Derrick Henry being on that list, but he was tops on that list at 88%. So that's a great sit call there. I would have never even thought about Derrick Henry. I had him in my dynasty league. I just recently traded him away because I got tired of dealing with him. But good call there with Derrick Henry. All right, Jason, what you got for your sit call?
The fact that you were able to trade away Derrick Henry, I applaud you, my friend.
And if you knew what I got back from him, you'd be even more sicker.
I'd call that guy and ask him for another trade. I haven't done a sick call of the week for a while, but I'm going to have to go with Jeff Driscoll. Or is that his name, Driscoll?
Yep.
I'm going to go with Driscoll to be a top 5 quarterback this week.
Oh.
Wow, top 5.
Just top 5. I understand the Broncos defense they are a good defense, but a lot of their games on the road, they just don't show up. And if you don't believe me, go look at that Jets game when they played them about 5 weeks back against the New York Jets. The Jets took them to the house. And I believe that Jeff Driscoll, because he also has rushing upside, like Tim said, and he will get those rushing yards. And I believe he can have 3 touchdowns and maybe 250 yards. And also you can pair him up with A.J. Green, because A.J. Green is back now, guys. And he will be low owned. He'll be very low owned. And also you got C.J. Uzama. And he's also he's really cheap at tight end as well. So that's my sick call of the week, Jeff Driscoll for, I don't know, I guess, what is that? 3 touchdowns, 250 yards. That's at least 25 DraftKings points and 22 FanDuel points. So take it to the house, guys.
All right. So before the show, we kind of talked about our sick calls, and I mentioned Jeff Driscoll as being my sick call. Jason just steps in and just steals my thunder here. So I had to quickly scramble to find another guy. But let me just talk about Jeff Driscoll a little bit before I get into my new sick call, since Jason wasn't paying attention to me before the show started.
I was setting up.
Jeff Driscoll this year has, I believe, let me pull up his stats here real quick to make sure I get this right. He's got 2 touchdowns rushing over the last 2 games. He has a total of 6 carries with 2 touchdowns, 49 yards, 8 yards per rush for Driscoll. He's a running quarterback, and they will use him that way. So I think that he's definitely in play. He can get that rushing touchdown and give you that nice floor. So Jason does not listen in the pre-show meeting, so we'll have to.
we're setting. Dude, you know how hectic it is when we're setting up, right? You remember that?
Yes.
So but I will be honest with you. In the back of my head, while I was looking at this, I was like, I swear I've heard this before somewhere. And so I'm sorry, but if we can be correct, though, remember a couple weeks ago, I believe you and Tim or my brother shared the sick call. It was Corey Clements or Wendell Smallwood.
Wendell Smallwood, I believe.
Smallwood got 13 points. So let this be a sign to you guys that sometimes here at Going for Two, we share calls, and when we do, sharing is caring, and they go off. So let's leave it at that.
All right, good stuff.
Apparently it's Driscoll week, fellas. Let's go.
Let's do it. All right, so I had to quickly scramble there while he was talking about my player that I actually picked pregame or pre-show. So my guy that I came up with is going to be Taylor Gabriel for the Chicago Bears. We saw last week that Chase Daniels kind of loved Gabriel. He targeted him quite a bit in that offense. The Giants' defense is not a very good defense, especially their number 2 cornerback. He had 8 targets last week. The week before that, he had 9 targets, so he's getting the targets. He hasn't got the big play yet. I know he's kind of a big play receiver. He only had 49 yards in that, with those 8 targets. But against this Giant defense, I think that can potentially happen here. He needs to break 1. He's 5,300 on FanDuel. How much is he over on DraftKings, Tim? You got that pulled up?
4,200.
4,200 over on DraftKings. So that'll be my new sick call of the week. But if Driscoll goes up, I'm taking credit for that one too.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, man.
It's all good, man. It's all good. Gerson doesn't listen during the show sometimes. I'll come to Gerson and be like, yeah, someone we haven't mentioned, and he'll talk about the guy I just literally talked about. I'm like, Gerson, were you even paying attention?
You know what he is like when he does that though. Is he's looking at other stats.
Yeah, I know, because I can see him. I can see him on my screen at the same time. The audience can't see him, but I see him like studying all this, and I'll talk about a certain guy, and I'll come to him, and he'll go, someone we haven't talked about yet. And I'm like, Gersten, we literally just mentioned that guy.
Yeah. Or he'll say, nobody's really talking about this guy. We literally just talked about him.
But, he's getting better at it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, Gersten, I know you're listening to the show, man. We love you. We can't wait to get you back on the show, man. Work those 14-hour days and get that money and come back next week.
Get that money.
All right, let's go around the house here and get our Twitter handles. Jason, if you even know your Twitter handle, I don't know if you do or not, but because you don't go on Twitter very often.
I'm not even going to try, bro. I'm not even active on Twitter, so I just feel like I'm obligated to give one out. But you know what, guys? You don't even worry about Twitter. Just find me at Facebook at the DFS Roundtable. I'm there. For my cash games, I always put up the core the Sunday morning. I put up a core, and I help everybody out. Last week, I put up some plays last week. I had a friend of mine, he messaged me, and he goes, hey, dude, man, I'm glad you posted your plays because I wasn't even on Barkley, and I wasn't even on CMC. I'm like, well, who were you on? And he told me, and in a way though, he was on the right, because he was on like a lot of people were on James Conner, and then the other running backs, and I was just like, okay, well, you got to look at it that way, and he's like, okay, it makes more sense. So I try to help out people, and Tim does too. Tim's actually very active and responding to people. I'm just too busy building 150 lineups and my cash game roster. So, he's really good at that in the morning. So you can find me there. And I'm excited.
All right, good stuff. Tim, where can we follow you at?
Yeah, as Jason mentioned, the best way to get a hold of us is going to be in the DFS Roundtable. We do breakdowns throughout the week. We do threads, and then we always do updates on Sunday mornings. So that's going to be your spot to check. And then if you want to get at me on Twitter, I'm at KetoDFS. That's at KETODFS.
All right, good stuff. We had a few questions here just to close the show out. Aaron asked if Gersten and Jason are identical twins. Yes, they are. I believe. Jason, are you older by like an hour, or is it Gersten that's older by like an hour?
Gersten's older by like an hour, but let's not go into that story. Third world country, guys, just remember that. They don't realize there's a second baby in there. It's ridiculous.
And then one more question from Jason, because we kind of cut the show off there. The show does syndicate. It'll be up on YouTube. It'll be syndicated on YouTube. We also syndicate on all your major podcast networks in audio format. So iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. You can find the full thing there as well. So if you miss a little bit of the show, you can definitely come back and check us out there. It'll also get posted on goingfor2.com. And I mean, pretty much anywhere. You just go search for Talk Loud Radio on Google, and you're going to find everywhere you can possibly find us. So good stuff there. All right, guys, for Tim, for Jason, I'm Jeff. You can follow me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. That's a wrap.
Go, Pack, go.
Raiders suck.
I love
Fire
it.
McCarthy.
We can't even